Have you ever imagined what would occur if you totally transformed your daily routine for just 30 days? Well, I gave it a try. The new 2025 system was all the rage everywhere. Individuals asserting that it could revolutionize your mindset, enhance your concentration, and unleash next level achievements. I was not sure at first, but then I asked myself, why not me? So I dared myself 30 days, no excuses, pure dedication. And then what happened truly changed everything. It all began with a tiny thought: what if it can be done better? You know, that quiet wonder that creeps up on you when you're scrolling through hours and hours of videos and articles, and suddenly you find something new. For me, that thing was the 2025 method. I kept hearing people mention it: influencers, productivity professionals, even my friends. Everyone had some anecdote about how this technique was transforming their life, making them sharper, more concentrated, more in command. And I gotta be honest, initially I dismissed it. I said to myself, it's just another internet fad that'll pass next month. But beneath, something within me was curious. You see, curiosity is a powerful thing. It begins small, like a whisper in your head, but if you allow it to grow, it becomes this unending draw, this desire to know for yourself. That's what happened with me. I was stuck for some time. You know that state where everything is okay, but not amazing? My days were on autopilot. I was doing things, yes, but not growing. So when I came across the 2025 method that was promising change, energy, and concentration in only 30 days, something in me snapped. Perhaps this was the wake-up call I needed. I recall the precise moment I made the decision to do it. It wasn't some grand, dramatic choice. I sat late one evening with my laptop in front of me, nursing cold coffee. I had just read yet another blog about someone's 30-day success story, and something clicked. These individuals weren't superheroes. They were simply consistent. They experimented with something new and held on. I saw that the only barrier between me and a potential breakthrough was trying. So I promised myself 30 days, no excuses, no shortcuts. Just me and the 2025 method. The following morning was different. You know the feeling when you begin something new. That combination of excitement and nervous anticipation. That's what it was. I didn't have a clue what was going to happen, but I felt like myself again. I began to study more intensively what the process was, how it worked, and why individuals were seeing such dramatic results. And the more I studied, the more I was eager to go deep. It wasn't merely a new habit or productivity hack. It was about rewiring how I handled my time, my mind, and my development. But if I'm being real, there was another factor: the fear of failure. What if I couldn't keep the pace? What if it didn't work out for me? What if I was wasting my time? These thoughts crept in, but I chose to meet them squarely. I told myself that the true failure would be not to even attempt. Because every time you dismiss that spark of curiosity, you close the door on a potential version of you, an improved one. So I accepted that uncertainty. I assured myself that even if nothing miraculous did occur, I would learn something about my habits, my willpower, and my self-discipline. And truly, that was enough inspiration to get started. Sometimes the greatest trips begin without promise, just with a little curiosity and a desire to see what's on the other side. In retrospect, I see that this little spark, this curiosity, was the root of all that came next. It was the catalyst that got me up earlier, the reason I remained consistent, and the reason I persisted even when it was hard. Because once you chase that spark, it takes off. It drives you. And before you know it, curiosity becomes commitment, and commitment becomes transformation. When I initially began exploring the 2025 method, I knew one thing: it wasn't some new productivity hack or morning routine fad. It was better than that. It was a system, a mindset shift that was bringing together clarity, structure, and consistency in a manner in which I had never seen before. We all kept hearing that it was created for the new age achiever, the person dwelling in this modern, Virtual world where there are no end of distractions, and the hardest currency to find is concentration. That in itself piqued my interest. Because if anything, we all have difficulty with today is maintaining consistency, while all we're surrounded by is things designed to shatter our concentration. So, what is the 2025 method, anyway? Well, it's a combination of science, supported habits, and forward thinking principles to create momentum in small but significant ways. It is a 30-day reset for your lifestyle and mind. It hinges on 5 core pillars: clarity, routine, focus, wellness, and reflection. Each day follows a format. Begin with intention, work with purpose, and conclude with reflection. It read easy on paper, but soon I understood the actual magic lay in how everything came together. Clearness came first. Each morning I'd take a few minutes to clarify my why for the day. Not a checklist of activities, but a single question: what will make today important? This simple process transformed everything. Rather than opening my phone or dashing into work, I began my mornings with purpose. It gave my days direction. Then came structure, not the rigid, dull sort, but a malleable rhythm that accommodated my energy rather than battled against it. The 2025 method doesn't put you into one size fits all. It assists you in creating one that suits your lifestyle and objectives. In my case, that was to schedule my mornings for immersion work, afternoons for creativity, and evenings for unwinding and review. And let me tell you, after I began respecting those blocks, I saw how much time I had wasted on things that didn't really matter. The third leg, focus, was the most difficult but rewarding. The system instructs you to exercise your attention as a muscle. Brief, intense periods of concentration interspersed with conscious breaks. It wasn't about putting in more hours, it was about putting in smarter hours. I started applying tiny hacks such as the 9-30 rule, where I concentrated intensely for 90 minutes and then took a 30-minute break to recharge. It conditioned my brain to appreciate quality over quantity. Then there was wellness, something I too often put aside for the sake of productivity. The 2025 method regards your mind and body as a singular system, and if one gets out of step, the whole thing disintegrates. So I began to include mini workouts, conscious breathing, and even digital detox sessions. It wasn't simple at first, particularly staying away from my phone for periods of time. But soon enough, I found my energy levels evening out. My mind was lighter, sharper, more even, and lastly, reflection. This segment was my best. Each evening, I'd spend 5 to 10 minutes reflecting on my day. The good, the bad, and what I might do differently tomorrow. It was as if I was having a daily dialogue with myself. And that's where the growth really occurred. Not merely in the doing, but in the knowing. By the first week, I knew why folks were labeling this approach revolutionary. It wasn't that it involved some hidden gimmick. It was because it taught you to return to the basics: discipline, balance, and purpose, in a life that tends to draw you in all directions. It caused me to see that change doesn't necessarily result from more. Sometimes it results from doing the right things more mindfully. Learning the 2025 method was like acquiring a new language, the language of concentration and self-respect. It showed me that success is not merely accomplishing goals. It's about owning your time, your attention, and your mindset. And as soon as I understood that, I knew I was prepared to actually start my 30-day challenge, not as an experiment, but as a promise to myself to be the best that I can be. The true test started on day 1. I recall waking up that day with a blend of eagerness and uncertainty, the sort you experience when you're on the verge of beginning something new, but aren't quite convinced what you've signed yourself up for. I had my notes in hand, my strategy mapped out, and my focus set. But despite all of that preparation, a tiny voice within wondered, "Can you really commit to this for 30 days?" That was when I understood the first principle of every change. It's not a measure of how prepared you are. It's a measure of how dedicated you're willing to be. So I said to myself one thing: regardless of what occurs, simply show up every single day. That was my mantra for the subsequent 30 days. The first week was adjustment week, waking up earlier than I ever have, adhering to the disciplined schedule, concentrating without distraction. It was hard. I had to break the old patterns, such as reaching for my phone the moment I woke up or doing multiple things at once and claiming to get work done. The 2025 method required intention, not busyness. It compelled me to take a breath, take my time, and truly be present in what I was doing. By the second week, I began to notice subtle differences. My mornings were clearer. My concentration during work blocks was better. I was completing tasks quicker and with greater accuracy. But it wasn't only productivity. Something within me was changing as well. I felt more relaxed, in control, and more conscious of how I allocated my time. The inner noise in my head started to diminish. I was no longer responding to life, I was reacting to it. Then came week 3, the challenge's most difficult portion. This is where everyone else quits, and I nearly did as well. The excitement had gone, and the routine became monotonous. There were days when I simply did not want to do it. Days when I was exhausted, when all within me was shouting, "Avoid today, nobody will notice." But I kept reminding myself why I began, that initial sense of wonder, that vow I had made to myself. So, rather than quitting, I leaned in. I told myself that discipline is born precisely in those moments when motivation perishes. I began journaling more, recording my battles, tiny victories, and musings every evening. This habit grounded me. It helped me remember that change isn't about being perfect. It's about staying consistent. And gradually, I was able to get back into the rhythm. By week 4, something amazing occurred. All the pieces began to fit. My routines no longer felt forced. They were becoming automatic. I was waking up without an alarm, ready to tackle my day. I no longer had the desire to pursue distractions because my mind had mastered focus. The 2025 method was no longer a routine. It was a way of life. And the payoff was obvious. My output had doubled, my stress had decreased, and I was more engaged with my objectives than I ever had been. But more than all of that, most surprising to me was how this approach transformed my thinking. I discovered that change is not instantaneous, but it is incremental, daily in the small, steady steps that add up over time. When I got to day 30, I didn't feel like I was completing something. I felt as if I were just getting started, because those 30 days weren't about demonstrating the method correct. They were about demonstrating myself to be able. It showed me that you don't need ideal conditions to begin. You just need to begin and believe in the process. So when people ask me, was it worth it? I tell them, absolutely. Not only for the results I achieved, but for the person I became during the process. Because the 30-day challenge wasn't just a test of a method. It was a test of what's possible when you give your total commitment to something that matters to you. By the end of the 30 days, I could feel it. Something had changed inside me. It wasn't about completing a challenge. It was about seeing how much I had grown in such a short period of time. When I started, I was uncertain, flustered, and really quite skeptical. But being there on day 30, looking back at the journey, I felt like I was staring at a different person, more centered, more balanced, and more in command of my life. The change wasn't cinematic like in a montage from a movie. No night and day miracles or overnight fame. It was understated, unassuming, yet profoundly strong. Every day, I had been constructing minute bricks of progress without so much as noticing. My mornings, which used to be crazy and frantic, now were moments of focus and direction. I would get up bright and early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. That sense of being on purpose from the moment I woke up was worth more than gold. My efficiency increased, but in a completely different manner than I anticipated. It wasn't a matter of getting more done. It was a matter of getting the most important thing done. Previously, I would count my days by how many things I was able to tick off my list. Now, I counted them by how purposeful I was with my time. I ceased multitasking and began to devote my undivided attention to something at a time. The payoff? My productivity improved, my anxiety decreased, and for the first time in a long, long time, I actually felt good about how I was spending my days. But the most dramatic change occurred in my attitude. I ceased waiting for motivation to hit me. Instead, I had to learn to keep going even on the days I didn't want to. I understood that consistency isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, particularly on the tough days. The 2025 method reprogrammed my mindset regarding discipline. It wasn't punishment, it was an act of self-respect. Each tiny, consistent action was a way of telling myself, "You're serious about your growth." And then the emotional shifts, the kind that won't be captured in before and after pictures but totally transform the way you live. I was more relaxed, more patient, and more thankful. The daily reflection sessions became my form of meditation. They helped me learn to stop and appreciate progress, even if it was minute. I began to feel the impact in my relationships as well. I was hearing more, responding less, and communicating with more purpose. Physically, I was more acute and had more energy. The wellness habits, brief exercise, conscious breathing, screen time breaks, all contributed. I slept better, my concentration was stronger, and even my creativity felt reawakened. It was as if I had discovered a new level of mental sharpness that I hadn't realized was there. But what truly amazed me was the ripple effect that this change had. The people in my life began to notice. Friends would comment, "What's different? You're more focused, more upbeat." And that's when it struck me. True transformation doesn't so much alter what you do as alter who you are. And that energy radiates out to everyone around you. The results of those 30 days went far beyond what I expected. Sure, I became more productive, disciplined, and balanced. But the real result was this deep sense of self-trust. I learned that when you commit fully, truly, wholeheartedly, you can change almost anything in your life. The 2025 method didn't just help me manage my time, it helped me rediscover my potential. Standing there on the last day, I realized that the greatest thing about transformation isn't the outcome itself. It's the understanding that you had within you all along. You just needed something to awaken that potential. And for me, the 2025 method was that wake-up call. When the 30 days were finally up, I knew that the greatest payoff wasn't the measurable results. It was what I took with me, lessons that weren't on a page or in a journal, but truths that shifted my perspective on life, work, and myself. The 2025 system taught me a lot more than habits. It taught me how to live. The first thing I learned was that consistency trumps intensity every time. I used to believe that success would be achieved through massive effort and large, grand changes. But what actually worked was the tiny daily steps I made. There were days when I was unstoppable, and there were days when I just managed to get there. But I did show up. That was the key. The growth that was imperceptible in the beginning began to snowball over time. It made me realize that change doesn't occur in leaps of biblical proportions. It occurs through subtle persistence. The second thing that I learned was about discipline, not as a constraint, but as freedom. Initially, following a routine was like I was imprisoning myself in structure. But the more days passed, I understood that discipline doesn't restrict you, it frees you. It brings order to the chaos. It helps you take charge of your time, your feelings, and your decisions. After I conquered discipline, I was no longer a victim of distraction. My thoughts grew quieter, my behavior became deliberate, and my days began to feel easier. Discipline, I came to learn, isn't about coercing yourself. It's about honoring yourself. The third thing I learned was about the power of introspection. Each evening, sitting with my journal and chronicling the day, the victories, the setbacks, the lessons, I began to notice patterns. I observed what gave me energy and what depleted me. I noticed where I was expanding and where I was stagnant. Reflection proved to be my own compass. It led me toward improved choices. It reminded me that growth without awareness is merely movement, not development. The fourth lesson was one that really transformed me. Mindset matters. The language you use to yourself defines how far you will get. There were days when I was tired, demotivated, or infuriated. But rather than quitting, I learned to flip the dialogue in my mind. I substituted "I can't" with "I'll try" and "I'm failing" with "I'm learning." That difference in words altered my energy. It brought me back to mind that failure is not the end, it is feedback. Once you get control of your mindset, nothing seems insurmountable. And lastly, the strongest lesson of all, you are your best investment. We invest so much in things in our life, our job, our duties, our material possessions. But how many times do we really invest in ourselves? The 2025 method showed me that every single hour invested into self-improvement repays 100-fold. Whether it was journaling, working out, or just being present, every minute I took for myself made me stronger, clearer, and more able to give my best to everything else. At the end of those 30 days, I realized something profound. This wasn't only a challenge. It was a mirror. It was a mirror of what I was, what I believed in, and what I could achieve if I remained committed to my mission. The teachings I received didn't stop on day 30. They became an integral part of who I am today. I still apply them to this day, in my choices, my routines, and how I conduct myself. If I had to distill all that the 2025 method taught me into a single sentence, it would be: alter your habits, and you'll alter your days. Shift your mindset, and you'll alter your life. Because once you have a taste of what can be achieved with concentration, self-discipline, and confidence in yourself, you will never wish to return to life on autopilot again. And so, standing here today, reflecting on those 30 days, I can assure you this: it wasn't merely a challenge. It was a journey of rediscovery. The 2025 method did not only show me how to work smarter or think clearer, but more importantly, it made me remember that true change starts the moment you take responsibility for your own development. Those 30 days weren't perfect. They were about improvement. Every setback, every little accomplishment, every late night thinking, they were all part of a puzzle that allowed me to realize what I'm truly capable of. And that's what I want you to take away today. Your potential is not something you discover. It's something you construct. If there's one thing I want to leave with you, it's this: you don't have to wait for the ideal moment to begin transforming your life. Begin where you are. Utilize what you have. Do what you can. Because the space between who you are and who you want to be is constructed one consistent day at a time. Perhaps your 2025 method looks different than mine. Perhaps it's an objective, a dream, or a self-discipline you've been procrastinating on. Whatever it is, commit to it for 30 days. Commit your attention, energy, and heart to it. You'll be surprised at what you learn about yourself. And when you do, when you notice just how much power you really hold to create your own life, you'll never second-guess your potential again. Because at the end of the day, the true amazing outcome wasn't only in what I accomplished, it was in who I had become. Thank you.